Good morning, friends. Adab, Sat Sri Akal, Namaskar. Today I am going to talk a very journalized topic. This is a topic where we people are very antagonized by our government of India. Now we must realize that what is the government supposed to do for us and what we are supposed to do for our government. It is something like what when the American president said, don't think what the American government does for you, but think what you do for American government. So we need to also sometimes think like this. Yes, any land minus the cantonment can be acquired, but it has to be acquired under the Land Acquisition Act. So today we are going to talk on the three pillars of the state. Now what are these three pillars? We need to understand. The three pillars are basically the executives, the legislature and the judiciary. So we'll talk one by one. Now our plight in these cantonments of our residents is absolutely unbelievable. Basically most of the bungalow owners are lone bread earners. We as inhabitants are living in a situation which is very servile. Even after 72 years of independence, we the inhabitants of these British cantonments are forced to live like gulams, servitudes. The department which looks after our land holding, the DGD, below their subordinate PG, PDGE or the DOs and even the COs, we are left with no hearing on a public platform. Who, when and how will make your and my living in these British cantonments emancipate that we are governed by our Constitution of India? The Ministry of Defence, through its official, has let us be crucified to their atrocities. Rule of the land, the Constitution of India, we mostly talk, does not apply on us. So who's our unabashed sovereign of these lands under which we inhabitants live? Called the cantonment boundary pillars. That is the Ministry of Defence. And somewhere this ministry or this department has become self-aggrandizing. They do not want to listen to the inhabitants. We in these British cantonments are in a certificable agony to whether implicit ourselves to the Constitution of India. Why? Friends, I can assure you, things are not good. I like to quote what Bishop Benjamin Hagley in 1717 said. Whoever has absolute power to interpret the law, it is he who is the lawgiver, not the one who originally wrote it. Now what did he mean? Way back, the Britishers wrote the laws. They moved out of 1947. Now, do our departmental officers or do our third pillar, the judiciary, is aware of these special cantonment laws? No, they are not. And have our advocates been taught about these laws when they were doing law? No. So they even are not are aware of these laws. So who's actually going to be at our mercy? We ourselves need to educate ourselves. Another jurist of America, Benjamin N. Cardoso had in his book The Nature of Judicial Process said, the law which is the resulting product is not made but found. The process being legislative demands legislature wisdom. Now these quotes are there. Why can't our people sitting, our MPs of these 57 cantonments, unite, come on one platform, understand these laws by somebody? I did an effort in 2011-12. The present regime is also trying of the association AIC, some W, Mr. Sarna. But where are we reaching? Because actually we are unable to educate our member parliaments or our local MLAs, and nobody is actually picking up this point. It's a very small issue. Any MLA, it's written in Rule 4, Section, Cantonment Act. Get down, have a meeting, civil area can be excised tomorrow morning. But why is the politician or the political administration not doing it? Because this is all a connivance. The CEOs don't want to leave the holdings on the land. They feel they are the forefathers of these lands, so they can trouble us, make money and do things like this. I'll read another line from Mr. M.R. Cohen in his book called Law and Social Order. We as people, I would talk of, some simple-hearted people believe that the names we give to things do not matter. But though rose by any other name might smell as sweet, the history of civilization bears ample testimony to the momentous influence of names. At any rate, whether the process of judicial legislation should be called finding or making laws is undoubtedly of great practical moment. So where are those MLAs? Where are those MPs? Where is the government of India? Is army above the constitution? Is nation first or army first? Today we are in an imbalanced equilibrium. The three pillars have gone wavy, and this needs to be rectified. A very senior judicial acumen man, Justice John Marshall, who was the Supreme Court Judge of America, warned that the power of judiciary lies not in deciding cases, nor in imposing sentences, nor in punishing for contempt, but in trust, confidence and faith of a common man. Is the judiciary listening to us? I'll quote a very straight example. 2001 Chitra Kumari versus Union of India is not allowed to lead additional evidence. But in 2003 Union of India versus Mannalal Agarwal, Saulabh Surabji takes an application of additional evidence and the case is remanded back to the lower court. Why this indiscrimination at the hands of the judiciary? My case in 2011, I am fighting for additional evidence. The judiciary does not allow us. Because we in the last 72 years have been actually briefed into that cantonment boundary pillars, and this belongs to government, Ministry of Defence. So friends, these three pillars of the Constitution, what are they? I just called, they are in a composite form called the state. The judiciary, the executive, the legislature. Now coming to the concept of human dignity that distinguishes humanity from the animal world. The Supreme Court has very clearly recognized my right of life, which includes the right to food and clothing, right to shelter, and right to my livelihood. If any of the single thing is deprived of, I lose my dignity. My fundamental freedom of equality goes away. Am I getting this? I'm not. In these cantonments, we do not get this. Who will get up and say that, yes, people living in these cantonments, numbering to about 1 lakh or so, need to be given this? So we inhabitants of these 57 cantonments of British era are at a disadvantageous stage when the word of shelter or livelihood comes. My government of India is a signatory to the international humanitarian laws under section 3 of it. But where is that? Respect, protect, fulfill. Does the state say in respect must abstain from violating human rights? When it comes to protect, the state must prevent other individuals or other groups for committing such violations. Now, when it comes to fulfillment, must take measures to ensure that every person within its jurisdiction has an opportunity to enjoy these human rights, which are promised but cannot be achieved by personal efforts alone. Now, who's the personal effort alone here? That's me, Raghavendra Das. I have been screwed in 2003. I have been raped in 2011. 2008, I've been bashed by a notice of 1 crore. 2015, the men in uniform play havoc with me on my compensation. So, who's looking into me? Has any bungalow owner, cantonment or any resident, whether Ambala or these 57? So, we people are in a very, very destituted state. Please, let's wake up. So, who will prevent all this? Where are those perpetrators of these violations? Army has never been deprived of any doing. Their local citizens and their fundamental rights are above us, inalienably as also inseparable from human rights. There is therefore no question of state fulfilling all this because it comes against the army. So we need to differentiate now, and we must ask our 3 pillars that the state does not mean as one. It means 3 independent identities. At least either of the one should look into us, our problems. The executives, they seem to have taken a deliberate path of misinterpreting and interpreting as per the connivance and vested interest to the laws and the rules. And they are the briefers to the legislature. So the legislatures, what they do, they aid and abet with the executives by abdicating all responsibilities on the executives. So where do we go? The only most independent pillar left is judiciary and supportive to the fundamental rights of the local citizens of these 57 cantonments. But going to the judiciary means we file suits or we file cases. What happens there? We are left into litigation for next 10 years, 15 years, 40 years like Mannalal Agarwal or Purushottam Das Tandon. Friends, the situation is not good. Justice Hosbut Suresh wrote in a judgment, the right to adequate housing, which is widely recognized under international human rights law and of course affirmed by Supreme Court, includes the right to be protected against forced evictions now. Now what is this eviction? Why am I picking up this topic? The Government of India has given an act called PP Act 1957 to be and 1971 to be, and now an amendment 2015. There is forced evictions, means the removal of individuals, families and communities from their homes, lands or neighborhoods. It also means the destruction of livelihood, culture, communities, and also possessing and belongings, besides the suffering, trauma, and feelings of insecurity. Whenever the right of housing is violated in forced evictions by the PP Act, a number of other rights are affected. When we are forcibly evicted, the most affected people are children and women, who suffer the most by their livelihood of the husband and of the education of the children. They lose it. Employments of men move out. Where do we go? We are thrown on streets. Our household items at times are given back or are neither given back. They are confiscated. Then we are charged for it. Even our health is affected by all this. Communities, families get torn apart. Disintegration happens with this. The government or the system is infringing into the rights of my family. My privacy is taken away. How army barges into the bungalow, how it cordons off to the whole roads. Nobody is able to approach them. My security, my assets, everything is violated. These days I am hearing, even after an High Court judgment from the Sikandrabad Belgaum cantonment of Nitin Court versus Cantonment Board Belgaum, even then the army is restricting to our free movement. Our freedom to the roads and accessibilities are being denied, where it is written in the constitution that no road can be closed. Recently, the former Minister of Defence, Nirmala Sitharaman, had very clearly passed a letter. Army doesn't want, they have a small issue, we have a security problem. So they will close those roads. The right to security of a person, also widely established, means little in practical terms when people are forcibly evicted by men in uniform. Violence erupts, bulldozers and intimidation takes place of women, arrest or killing of community leaders opposing forced evictions, or a common and violates the right of my life to freedom of expression, the right to join organizations of one choice. People don't want to join any association because they feel that the men in uniform or the executives will start targeting them. That is why these cantonments are unable to come under one umbrella of the association every time somebody rises up. So there are so many things. When this government in this country after 1947, it's a huge, great tragedy, can make laws for refugees. The present CAA bill can save any Hindu migrants from even Afghanistan, would get his citizenship. But the man who's been living in this country 100 years or 150 years down the line in these cantonments, 57, he is worse than a refugee. We are internally displaced by the men in uniform. Why? Wake up, friends, please. I'm disturbed. We people are nothing less than slaves. I would endorse what the Jalandhar civil area people had said, that we must celebrate our 15th August 1947 as not Independence Day, but as a beginning of our slavery day. During the British 1947 and prior, I have documents where the Britishers never ever asked for our bungalows to be resumed, never restricted us for repairs, never restricted us from sale, even never restricted us from mortgaging our bungalows and taking loans. What has changed after 1942? Why is our government so insecure towards these 57 cantonments? Why is the executive and men in uniform so desirable, so hungry to take away this not even 0.3% of the total land holding of 17.3 lakh acres? Please, wake up. Justice Suresh had said, all forced evictions must be considered an infringement of human rights. the removal of individuals, families or communities from their homes, lands or neighborhoods against their will, directly or indirectly, attributes to the state should be considered a gross violation of human rights as propounded by the International Human Rights Instrument, which India is a signatory to the International Convention on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. So we pose a different image when we go internationally, and when we come down internally, the men in uniform are the sole guardians of these properties. No, let the truth come out. I bet on, if I am allowed to prove not a single piece of this land which the Britishers made out of these 102 cantonments to begin with, and we were left with 57 only. They kept under section 4 abandoning cantonments, leaving the local self-government area back to the owners, and were only interested in where the barracks were erected, which is today called Class A lands. Wake up, friends, holded and requested hands, call me up, talk to me. Don't get disturbed, don't get worried. Yes, we are in a situation where we are sitting on a time bomb, or our foot is on a mine. The minute we lift our feet, the mine will explode. I would request once again, these are not any GGO grants but are old grants converted into new grants by the Britishers, where we were revenue free, converted into lagans and revenues and house tax. Nothing more than that. Thank you. I would be available for everybody 24 hours into 7. Good day.